Hello and welcome to Where the Bush is Burning. I'm your host, Tom Tice, and each week we gather together and have a conversation about Christ. Something that has been impressed on me in the last week is this business of following Christ and what that exactly entails. So I'm going to take a few extra minutes today and read the 21st chapter of the Gospel of John. And then there are some things that I think are worth our time to consider as we have this conversation about Christ. In verse 1 of John chapter 21, after these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and in this way he showed himself. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, We are going with you also. They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them, Children, have you any food? They answered him, No. And he said to them, Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast. Now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment after he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. For he had removed it, rather, and plunged it into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, but about 200 cubits, dragging the net with fish. And as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. And Jesus said to them, Bring some of the fish which you have just caught. Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land, full of large fish, 153. Although there were so many, the net was not broken. Jesus said to them, Come and eat breakfast. Yet none of the disciples dared ask him, Who are you? Knowing it was the Lord. Jesus then came and took the bread and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said, Feed my lambs. Then he said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And he said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he said, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, Follow me. Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who had leaned on his breast at supper, and said to him, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, But Lord, what about this man? And Jesus said to him, If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me. Then this saying went out among the brethren, that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but that if he will remain. But if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? This is the disciple who testifies of these things, and wrote these things. We know his testimony is true. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were written one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. Amen. So, eyewitness account. This is an eyewitness account from John. John refers to himself at the tail end of the chapter when there's this discussion about Peter's question about what shall this man do. So John verifies, look, I saw these things. This is my record. This is a true record. This is what happened. So this is an eyewitness account. Peter was in a bad position. He had denied the Lord 3 times. He was aware that Christ had arisen from the dead at this point. However, what happened was that he, being downcast, feeling as if he'd betrayed the Lord, and rightly so, ashamed of himself, licking his wounds in that respect, he decided to go back to his trade. Now, I will tell you, this is very characteristic of anyone who is a tradesperson, when you find that you have failed, or when you find that life has kicked you down, and when you find that you have not lived up to your profession or expectations or desires or whatever, or goals, you've failed to reach your goals, you tend to revert to what you know. And in this particular case, he reverted to what he knew. He knew how to fish. That was his trade. And I can tell you from personal experience that this is exactly what happens. When this happens in your life, if you're a tradesperson, you tend to return to what you know and do best. And I have done this myself, and so I recognize the behavior. So Peter says, I'm going to go fishing. So they go to the Sea of Tiberias, Sea of Galilee. Tiberias had named it for himself. So they're out fishing and back in the old haunts, and they're there then plying their trade, and they fish all night, which is relatively common, and they don't get anything, which also happens. So early in the morning, they're not very far from land. 200 cubits is not that far. And so they're close to the land, and this figure calls out to them, have you caught anything? Well, that's a fairly common question for a person who fishes. Have you caught anything? Well, no, they haven't caught anything all night. And then Christ, who is the figure on the shore, says to them, well, cast on the other side of the boat, which is an uncommon thing. It wasn't really common for them to cast on the offhand. They cast on the one side typically. So he says, cast on the other side. So they do. Well, then they get this huge catch of fishes. We find out later it's 153. And they then bring them into shore. And when they come into shore, they find that there's already a fire of coals with fish on it. Peter had put his outer garment on, jumped out of the boat, and swam over to where Jesus was. And the rest of the people that were there were pulling in the fish. So that being said, they sit down, they eat breakfast, and then Christ directly starts to question Peter. And he starts to question Peter because, remember, Peter had said that he loved the Lord more than anyone else, that he would die for him, that he would follow him to the very end. Then, under pressure in the palace of the high priest, he denied the Lord 3 times. Christ had said this was going to happen. And so then he denies him 3 times. And Chris, this is a traumatic experience. Christ finally looks at him. He goes out. He weeps bitterly. This was, as far as Peter was concerned, the end for him as someone whom Christ was going to use or whatever. He figured he was done. You can see his thinking, and you can see this whole idea of him going back to his trade because, once again, that's what he knew, and that's how he felt that he was done as far as being a fisher of men. He was going to go catch fish that he was used to catching, and that was what he was planning on doing. So now Christ questions him, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these people, these other people? You profess that you love me more, that you would go all the way to the death. You denied me. So there's a lot of implications in what Christ is asking here. Do you love me more than these? And Peter replies, Lord, you know I love you. Then he says, feed my sheep. And so we go through this formula 3 times. Now, a lot of commentators, scholastics, people who have viewed this, deny that it was an opportunity for Peter to reaffirm his love for Christ on 3 separate occasions, whereas he had denied him on 3 occasions. They like to steer away from that idea. Think it's too pat, think it's too niche-y, too pat of an answer. I don't think it's actually true. I think that Christ understood how, I know for sure, certainly, that Christ understood how Peter thought. And so because he understood how Peter thought, he gave him the opportunity to affirm on 3 separate occasions that he loved Christ within the same context. The same reverse of which he had denied him. Now, to interpret it that way, I don't think is evidence of trying to be nifty. I just think it's Christ understanding an ordinary person, tradesperson, blue-collar guy, and understanding that if you've got something wrong 3 times, then you need to correct it all 3 times. So once again, I don't think you're sacrificing interpretation on the altar of niftiness there. That's not the case. I think it's just logical and sensible to anybody that works in the trades. If you mess 3 things up in the trades, you fix 3 things. That's what you do. So once again, he makes this statement to Peter. And then 3 times he says, feed my sheep, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. So then he comes out with this phrase, follow me. It says that directly to Peter, follow me. Fair enough. And then Peter, who I suspect may have been ADHD or something, may very well have been that kind of person. He looks at John and goes, well, what's going to happen to John? What's going to happen to this guy? And Jesus says, well, if I will that he tarry until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. Keep your eyes on your own paper, stay in your own lane. And as kindly as you can say that, that's what he's telling him. Don't concern yourself with what I'm doing in somebody else's life. Be concerned with what I want you to do, and I want you to follow me. So very, very, once again, very straightforward, very blue-collar sort of tradesperson conversation. Kind of thing you could hear on a job site. What do you care about what he's doing? You do your job. You pay attention to what I'm telling you to do. And so in the world of the trades, this is very common. This is a common kind of a conversation. So what do you derive from this for us? Well, there are several things I think that are worth considering in this context. One of them is we're all going to betray Jesus in one way or another. We are all going to fail. Every one of us, doesn't matter who you are, how devout you are, how much you love Jesus, how much you talk about him, everybody's going to fail. And everybody's going to fail him very specifically. Now, it may not be in exactly the same manner in which Peter did, but we're all going to do it. In my own trade, I tend to tell people when they've messed up, look, everybody gets a turn. If it's not your turn today, it'll be your turn tomorrow. Okay? We all get the chance to mess things up from time to time. Peter had messed up. Christ gave him the opportunity to correct it. And then Christ gives him a job to do and says, look, this is what I want you to do. I want you to feed my sheep, feed my lambs. So he restores him to his office, if you will, of disciple, and if you want to carry it far enough, eventually to the apostle, because he gets commissioned with all the rest of the disciples to go and testify of Christ. So he restores him. Then he gives him a simple instruction. He says, follow me. And Peter has this clear instruction and immediately starts to be concerned about John. Christ says, don't worry about what I'm going to do with him. You follow me. Well, the instruction is fairly simple in some respects. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. Yes, we're going to betray Christ in various ways. Yes, there's restoration with him. There's forgiveness. Psalm 130, if you should mark iniquity, who should stand? But there's forgiveness with you that you may be feared. So that makes sense. He's failed. He's been restored. There's forgiveness. He's got instructions. The instructions that he has are to follow Christ. Now, this is going to take him places, various parts of the ancient world to bear witness of Christ. And Christ says, this is what your future is going to be. In the past, you girded yourself. You went where you wanted. And when you get older, they're going to bind your hands. They're going to take you someplace you didn't want to go. Here's what the substance of the lesson is here in many respects. Following Christ may or may not take you every place you want to go. And it may take you to places where things happen to you that you don't want. However, that's not important as much as the fact that you follow Christ. Are there going to be unpleasant experiences? Well, yes, there are going to be unpleasant experiences. Is it going to entail things happening to you that perhaps you would prefer didn't happen? Probably yes. However, Christ takes us where he wants us to go because that's the best place for us to go, whether we often recognize it or whether we even want it or not. Christ is leading us to do particular things and to be in particular places, to exercise particular ministries, to help particular people. He does all of that, and that's all part of following him. We follow him in every element of our life, physical, mental, spiritual, social. We follow Christ. That takes us wherever it is he leads us. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So he says in John 10. So we understand that to follow Christ means that we just go wherever it is he leads us. And that will mean that we are doing what he wants us to do. It also may mean that we involve ourselves or become involved in situations that we would prefer not happen in human terms. That's just the way it happens. That's just the way it is. Because in following Christ, we don't know, I would say we don't know 95% of the time exactly what it is he's doing. Sometimes he pulls the curtain back and he gives us a clear idea of what's going on, and we get a larger picture. Very often, ours is the worm's eye view. We're just following Christ, and as long as we keep him in view, then we're going to be okay, even though the circumstances of our life may not be what we would necessarily prefer them to be. We have, as Peter says, our hands bound and people taking us places we don't want to go. This is what it means to follow Christ. It is. This is what it means to follow Christ. You do what he leads you to do. You follow him wherever he has for you to go. And as you do that, some of it's going to be really, really positive in your experience, and some of it's not going to feel as positive as all that. But you're still following Christ. And that leads you to the end that he desires for you. All the days of our years are 60 years and 10. That's 70. If by reason of strength they be 80. Yet is our strength, labor, and sorrow, for it soon cut off when we fly away. That's Psalm 90. So that's the Psalm of Moses. But this is the fact. We have 80 years and 10. If we follow Christ, he's going to lead us to the desired end that is suitable for him. After he said that in John 10, my sheep hear my voice and I know them and they follow me, he then went on to say, I give unto them eternal life and they shall never perish. So that's the end of that particular verse. Where does following Christ end? Following Christ ends in our being with Christ. So, in spite of all our failures, in spite of all the things that we do that aren't appropriate, in spite of all the weakness of our flesh and all the sin and all the things that we fail, wherein we fail, Christ is leading us as we follow him. He's going to take us. Sometimes it's going to be places we want to go. Sometimes it's going to be places we don't want to go. However, it's all part of the larger plan, and it lands in eternity with Christ. That's where it ends. So this is the largest view, really, of the Christian life. Follow Christ. Very simple instructions. Follow me. It's very much like learning certain things in the trades. You may be able to teach someone how, for example, to use a cutting torch in 10 or 15 minutes, but it takes a lifetime to master it, to master the use of that particular equipment. You can teach someone how to throw a rope on a ranch, and you may learn the basic principles within an hour. However, it's going to take a lifetime of practice for you to be able to successfully be as good as you could possibly be throwing a rope if you work for a ranch. All these things are part of what we need to understand. Follow me sounds very simple, and yet the logical extension or the complexity of it in the larger sense of the term is very, very great. So where do I go with this? Well, first of all, I follow Christ. And that means embracing him as God and Savior and Lord and Master, and believing on him and trusting by faith that he's the only Redeemer. That's important to start there. Then beyond that, what is important is that daily we follow him. And we follow him by studying him, by contemplating him, by learning more about him daily. That's really the nuts and bolts of the thing. And that involves the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the social, as I said. So here's the appeal today. First of all, embrace Christ. Secondly, follow Christ, understanding that your life is going to parallel to some degree Peter's, in the sense that you're going to follow Christ and he's going to take you where he wants you to go. And that may or may not be everything that you want at a given point in time. You may have experiences in the process of following Christ that are very unpleasant. Yet that doesn't mean that they're not the will of God or that you're in the will of God when you go through those experiences. It is to the purpose of God bringing you along to his eternal kingdom along the pathway that suits him. And it really doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. There's no point in asking, well, what about this guy? What is this guy going to do? Well, keep your eyes on your own paper, stay in your own lane, and follow Christ. That will get you where you want to go at the end. That will get you where he wants you to go at the end. We always are in peril when we're primarily following what suits us, our own will. That generally takes us down a bad road. So what I'm saying here today is that as you follow Christ, Christ will lead you in the right pathway. It will be good and bad in human terms, perhaps, circumstantially. Things will happen that you want to happen. Things will happen that you don't want to happen. And yet, that is all still part of the will of God and all still part of the larger framework. So that's our conversation about Christ for today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I appreciate those of you who watch consistently, and I thank you to those of you who have been giving feedback. I appreciate that tremendously. If you would like and subscribe, that would be lovely. We would appreciate that. If you would like to get the devotional, you may find it at hopeharbor.church. Hope Harbor is all one word, then church. And you can find our blog site there, and we have a devotional that comes up every day. Substack also is where the devotional appears, as does this video. And join us again next week. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and I trust the Lord will bless you as you continue to follow him.